So one of my favourite intellectuals is Thomas Sowell, and he said that the black family has survived centuries of slavery, generations of Jim Crow, but has disintegrated in the wake of the Liberals' expansion of the welfare state. Now you go back to Lyndon Baines Johnson, and in the 60s he brought out I can't remember what they're called, the Great something or other, where they gave out targeted benefits to black people. And within the space of 2 generations, you've now got a situation where the black family has disintegrated so much, and it specifically has to do with benefits, that you've got a 75% chance of being raised in a solo mum home, no dad. New Zealand is actually in a very similar predicament, where in the 70s we started targeted benefits, and what you found is that the Māori family, if you were in the 70s, you had an 80% chance of being born into a married mum and dad home. 80%. As of right now, it's 20%. So we've dropped 60%, we've dropped the guts. And we know from every scientific literature, well not every, but the good quality scientific literature and the longitudinal studies, that if you have a young person who's raised up in a mum and dad married home, stronger, more mentally resilient, emotionally resilient, less likely to kill others and themselves, more likely to engage in the middle class and get a good job and do positive decision making. We just know that. And in my own work, broken families, no dad. That's usually the way. So even when they come out with, what's the one of the big ones about institutional racism, 52% of prisoners are Māori. Therefore, there must be racism. No, that's nonsense. What you want to look at is the overall arching percentage in most of the prisoners. And second is usually education. First is they were raised in a broken home. What's worse, we don't keep those figures. Overseas keeps those figures. We don't.
We don't keep figures of whether people had a father at home or what their
Yep, prisoners.
Yeah.
In terms of our prison population, we don't know.
Well,
we know anecdotally,
yeah,
but we do not keep official figures, unlike other countries.
And then you add to that, drug abuse, alcohol addiction.
Coping mechanisms such as AUD behaviour, the follow-up abuse that they'll conduct, the anger that they will articulate out to those who are around them, and the growth of the innocent victims who just happen to be just driving in a neighbourhood and you smash and pull out of the car. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it's phenomenal how the individual psychology isn't really then factored into it. It just, anyone that does something bad that's got brown skin, it just gets labelled as it's clearly the system.
Here's a worse one for you. So Andrew Little's been listening to several different projects. Action Station, who are very well known for being justice oriented, they put out one called Dara Whānau. In Dara Whānau report, they clearly stated that it's not a crime. They're not talking about crimes. What they're talking about are acts of survival. So what this was an acts of survival. The number one reason for acts of survival was colonization. So they put that forward, and that's one of the reports that Andrew Little reads. This is the mindset of it. Quite fascinating. In the Dara Whānau report, the only time where they allowed people to have a survey, how do we lower the crime rates of Māori in prisons, and they gave them free range. the entire report, no mention or no mention of family being a strong or priority factor for lowering crime rates. Instead, there was only this one survey. This survey put family and family support as the number one reason of how you can help our rate of Māori in prisons go down. But this report was totally in opposition to that, and I thought that was just incredible.
So Action Station put out this report. So who are you saying did the survey, and who was behind it? Was it Action Station behind
Action
it?
Action Station, who
do they have academics?
Pretty much all academics.
Right.
And so you've got Action Station, and they collect a little bit of taxpayer money, and the other stuff is don't know. So I don't know what the percentage is there, but they do take some of our money. They build reports and are seeking prison reform and stuff like that. And so they put this Dara Whānau report together and sent it off. That's one of the ones that Andrew Little read. You've also got He Waka Roimata, and also Paneke Turiki, which is a report also that seeks to make a co-governance structure in the very prisons themselves.
What does that mean? What, the prisoners get to govern themselves as well? Or?
Well, the way it would look is that if you're Māori, you'd be taken to a whole different set of prison systems, facilities, programs, funding, revenue, whatever. And then if you're everyone else, you'd go into this other sort of area. It's just It's incredible.
So they're
Just incredible.
really trying to create
two nations.
right.
Well, in fact, they I think it's Dr. Moana Jackson, I think, but the race baiting academics and the race baiting politicians, those who make their money, power, and fame off tensions in our races, they're the ones who really are pushing the idea of co-governance structures, as well as even a constitution that actually splits New Zealand pretty much in half by saying, no, we're going to have one constitution which is for whether it's Palangi Pākehā, other people, and then one that's run by what they would refer to as Māori. And it's wrong. It's brutal.
So how likely do you think that this is actually going to go through?
If Labour get in, probable.
And
We already have co-governance structures that ended up being put in place. Oddly enough, the separatism movement or the co-governance structures actually didn't start with Labour. It actually started with National under Chris Van Leysen.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So that one, now that was under an aspect around water, but I don't remember. Here in Auckland, the main one is Tupuna Maunga Authority. So Tupuna Maunga Authority, I think it was Ngāti Whātua who got the deal. They've now been co-governance structure within Auckland Council. So ratepayers, we pay them, we give them money, salaries, the whole 9 yards. They then have control. They own the volcanic cones, Mount Eden, Mount Wellington, Pigeon Mountain, all that stuff. First thing they did was shut down and put down massive grey arms so that you block off cars, and if you want to get through you have to ring up and ask them, please may I. Then they've started to take down the white people trees. And I say white people trees because the way they say it is non-indigenous plantation or whatever. And some of these trees are over 100 years old. Just the very heritage aspect of it is just immense, but they want to just cut them down. Now, of course, from what I've heard, they now want to get rid of World War I and II plaques and commemorations. It is a disgraceful, and they are not bothering with any sort of public consultations or anything like that. In fact, I was at one meeting where they had a petition, and they basically got called racists and colonizers and all that. So it's quite a sad area. We've also got rumours. I haven't been able to confirm it with my own eyes, but from very safe people, I've been able to, at least in my heart, confirm that the prison heads are meeting together for mana orete. And mana orete is that idea of co-governance within the prisons. But there's a difference, because at the moment, Tupuna Maunga Authority is co-governance in local council. Mana orete will be a co-governance at the national legislated level, and that changes the game immensely.
Wow, so how do you think it will look on a national level then?
Well, the problem is then taxpayers will have to fund the entire thing. If the power and the jurisdictional authority changes, it's not a world that's going to be very good.
Because what's the percentage of Māori in this country at the moment?
About 15%.
So you have 15% of people that have a whole structure. And how are they going to divide the funds? How are they going to divide the taxes?
Well, it gets worse because if you look at the social statistics, of course, Māori are at the bottom for almost every negative social statistics that you can find. And that's going to cause more damage because a lot of the money doesn't go through to them. So, for example, Ngāi Tahu. Yes, Ngāi Tahu do a great job with their money and their settlement money. They've got millions of dollars and they have a pretty good turnover. But their people, however, a lot of their people still struggle hugely, and because they've got into a corporate environment, Kaikoura, for example, you'll find it seasonal, so you'll have people who work, and then they're just scattered to the dust, are made redundant after each season, and say, hey, toughen it up and go out. So you'll find that there's not even a great deal of help, support for that. It's supposed to trickle down. Now, when people ask us to look into that, I say no, we won't, because the idea of a settlement is, and iwi takes a settlement, then leave it alone. It becomes a private matter. If they help their people, awesome. If they don't help their people, that sucks, but that's their sort of stuff. So you will find that some scholarships are not paid for by government, but are paid for some iwi for anyone who has a blood link. Cool. I don't mind that because that's a private sector type of agreement that they have. I've got no problem with that. I've got a problem when you start saying at a government level, whether local or national, that if your skin colour or if your whakapapa, if your blood links go into this area, then we're going to treat you better because of that. Now that's disgusting. That's what the whole DHB thing is. Basically apartheid as far as I'm concerned.
So again, if you were to be in a position of power in government, how would you combat that kind of?
Oh, easy. So our treaty policy is pretty simple. We believe in the original treaty that was signed by 500 chiefs. That was a Te Reo Māori version. We would. So you've got 3 articles. First article is the price, the giving over of jurisdictional authority. The second one is a nuance and negotiation. What's mine is mine, yours is yours, and we will participate in trade. And if government wants to, if you want to give to the government, sweet. If you don't, sweet, no problem. The third one is one I love the most, and the third one says that all people of New Zealand will be given the same rights and privileges as those of the British Empire. That's beautiful, because especially if you understand the historical context of what it was. But that basically means that everyone will be treated the same, according to character, not skin colour. And that's what we want. So we say that we are the only party who are upholding all 3 articles of the treaty. There's a whole lot of breaches going on in the first and the third article, while just trying to push the second article breaches. So we would say, right, get rid of all co-governance structures, national and local. Get rid of anything that, get rid of the Māori seats, because we are not disabled. We are strong. We can make it in any sort of way. We don't need those seats at all, and it is actually quite racist now to have them in there. We would also get rid of anything that places any group of people above all New Zealanders. It's utterly wrong. The one thing we would give more money towards is we would give more money towards encouraging Te Reo Māori and Tikanga Māori. So we were happy to do that. The only thing is we would not make it compulsory for schools or people to, you don't have to learn it if you don't want to. You don't have to go into a marae if you don't want to. That's where we sort of stop in that regard. But so yeah. Get rid of anything that's race-based. Look after the language and the culture, and just don't force it on anyone.
And so just going back a little bit to how you were talking about this, what Action Station was saying, and they weren't even recognise the family as a way of
lowering recidivism rates. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of family and what the New Conservatives policy is around family.
So family's everything. In fact, when you have a look at the biggest areas, apart from things like neurological damage, those sort of aspects, the way in which we get through life, which will, for all of us, there will be easy times and hard times. We're going to be strong and weak. We're going to be, we're all going to have trauma in our lives. Every single one of us. We're all going to suffer in this life, and we're all going to have times of joy and happiness. But the biggest ways that we can gain support and be built into strong people is that time period between 0 and 3 and 3 to 16. Those are the 2 big developmental areas that we can find. So for us, family is just absolutely incredibly vital for this generation and every generation going forward. So we would start off by saying, right, first $20,000 that you earn is tax free, and that is so. Yes, it's for anyone who's doing a paper run, working at McDonald's, or is a superannuant. Doesn't matter. It's first 20k tax free, stimulus and things like that. That also means if you're mum and dad, then you've got $100, $120 a week that you can put in. That's for the big politicians, they don't care. For the richies, they don't care. But for most of our people, that means a lot. Gas in the car, date nights, being able to have registration fees, helping to pay off school fees, all of that stuff. You can do such a great amount with that. We also believe in income splitting. So that's if you've got if mum's out working or dad's out working, and that person is earning $70,000 a year, and mum or dad is at home looking after the kids, instead of taxing at 70k, you can split it. You tax them at the 35k bracket. That's another thing just to help again with families and the support. Big ones are that, not a benefit, not a handout or anything. It is your money. You get to keep it because you know what to do with your money the best. The state should not be telling you what to do with your money. So we're strong about that one. We're also strong about relationship training. We want to swap out the sexualized education that we're starting to see in our schools. Currently, the education and the sexual education in the curriculums are pushing the idea of that you're not a boy or a girl, but that you're actually on a spectrum. We absolutely oppose that, and it was our team who exposed that also to New Zealand. We're really proud of that. And so we fiercely oppose that. We say, no, swap that out, chuck in relationship training instead. So neurological development, how men generally operate, women generally operate, conflict resolution, just to give them those tools of the trade. Sex is actually not a part of the majority of your relationships day to day. Yet relationships are in every single day to day, whether it's going to the dairy and buying a pack of smokes or whatever, or having a discussion with your mate or whatever. The ideas of conflict resolution and how we all operate and communicate, that's important. Sex, you don't need to be teaching kids about the whole sex thing or the sexual identity or whatever. That's unnecessary, and it's causing great damage. So we would swap that part out. So yeah, there's a bunch. We're also opposed to the most brutal abortion bill in the Western world. New Zealand now has the most abortion bill. It used to be Ireland, but it's no longer. We're it. We are it. So we also totally oppose that one. In fact, one of our 2 non-negotiables is, if you want to build a government with New Conservative, you will repeal this bill and give it back to the people of New Zealand to have a referendum on, so that the people can decide on this horrific sort of scenario.
So could you just clarify why it is so horrific?
So at the moment, so now of course, it's pretty much any reason whatsoever up until 20 weeks. After 20 weeks, then you just need the sign off of 2 health practitioners. That was important because it's no longer doctors, it is 2 health practitioners. Really wide, you could even get them at abortion clinics themselves, it's not a problem. Also the politicians who push that forward, so what that means after 20 weeks, that means that you can actually, under the current law, you can kill a baby as the baby's coming out of the womb, because since that law was put in place a few months ago, under the law now, you are not a human. Under the Crimes Act, you're not a human until you are removed from the womb alive, entirely alive. So that means, feet, legs, all that. The only things that can be attached is placenta and umbilical cord. If everything else is out, then you're a human being. But if you've got a baby who's halfway out, then under the current law, you can smoke that baby's head. You can put the scissor in the back of the neck and open it up, and that is not a human being. Not a human being. And that's an incredibly brutal way of looking at it. I mean, that's what this whole thing was about, the definition of what it means to be human. So you have that, you can kill babies up to and including during birth. In fact, this was one of the most disgusting things I saw. The politicians who put it forward also blocked an amendment to say that if a baby is going through the dismemberment process, so late-term abortions, they cannot even be given painkillers. So, when you're talking about the live dismemberment, or even sticking a needle into the heart and then trying to boil the heart alive, then they're saying no painkillers. And of course we know why, because then that would be admitting that baby is a human life. So I think is that every single politician who voted for that despicable bill is despicable to me. I don't care what you do in your nice life. I saw a National Party MP who's nice and people love her, and she's, oh wow man, she voted for the most brutal abortion bill. And I'm sorry, but when you've got a baby who knows what pain is, who's been literally torn apart, I can't. And I'm not, my hands are not clean either. There's 2 times I've taken 2 14-year-old girls off to the abortion clinic and back, and because of the job that I was in at that time, that was my job, and I've got to face up to them myself. That's between me and that which my belief system goes to. But that is also partly law. The parents have no idea and have no right to know either. I did, and the institute that I was at did as well. But the parents who love their child, who would feed their child, scared, pray, hope, fear, no, they are not as worth to the child as the state is. That's incredibly dangerous. So.
And that's starting to go down the track of the state having more control over a child's life, and the parents slowly, like bit by bit, actually having less influence and less responsibility over that child.
Yes.
To the point where now, the children are being put into early childhood centres at a lot younger age.
Yes.
And so even the thought patterns and thought processes that are entering that child are actually going to be coming from the state, because the state then dictates to the early childhood centres what they teach and how they teach.
Yeah, well, it gets worse. So the gender ideology that we expose to the public we thought was bad enough. But as of 2 weeks ago, no, it wasn't. So Tracy Martin released papers that are saying that parents should be strongly encouraged to accept that their children may choose different genders and names for themselves. So giving power. Also, again, then now they want to embed LGBTQIA and gender ideology into the teacher's lesson plan. So embed it. Not only that, it's not just for high school. Now it goes down to 5-year-olds. So those are from Ministry of Education
Here
documents.
in New Zealand.
In New Zealand. So we printed them off, and we did a whole bunch of notes. In fact, so myself and our education spokesperson did a whole thing and blew it through the roof. And when you've got 5-year-olds being told that actually you're not a boy or a girl, but actually you're on some spectrum, there's a big problem. It's an incredible problem, and the damage that's going on with it is just it's nearly surreal that it's come to New Zealand. We saw it happening in the US and in France and in Europe and Scandinavia. We saw it going to safe schools in Victoria. We perhaps naively thought that it would not come to New Zealand, but Mason Dates was only the foot in the door. The current one that Tracy Martin of New Zealand First, the one that she's pushed into it now, is pure. It's a pure form, and it goes right to our children.
So I've actually heard of stories in early childhood centres where 2 boys were growing out their hair, dressing as girls, chosen their own girls' names. This is under, they're under 5, and they were the parents expected all the teachers to keep it a secret that they were actually boys, to treat them as if they were girls, to guard them when they went to the toilet so that none of the other children could see. And then it was overheard in their play that they were talking about how they were going to, basically have operations when they were older. And see, for me personally, I just think once you start then giving those types of children the drugs, the prepubescent, once they, you push them down the sex change.
The ones that you fund.
Yeah. And it's like, to me, I think that's child abuse.
That is child abuse. You can't really get around that. That is actually child abuse.
Because there's play, there's play where children will just take on play, and they just dress clothing up, and it's all just play. But to actually then encourage it and actually teach that, or tell that child that they are something that they are not, and make them live into that, to the point where then you've got these transgenders who actually the suicide rates are through the roof.
Horrific. Horrific. And
at what point are we going to say, well, actually, this is not a good road to be going down?
Yes. Yeah. And probably a lot of our. So I thought it was. So we brought out there and we got heaps of kudos for it. Yeah, awesome. But when we started then doing our public meeting, we still found heaps of people that know. So I would get people gasping and things like that. It still strikes me as odd. We need this. We need people to know that this is actually going on.
And then you've got the drag queens in libraries. Because I first saw that come out in LA, and just thought, oh gosh, this is next level. And I never actually thought it would come to New Zealand, like you're saying. But again, it has come to New Zealand. Just it was in Queenstown a few weeks ago. And I mean, drag queens, fine. Do what you want to do. It's actually a show that's based for club life, for adult entertainment. And at what point would we ever say that it was fine for a woman to get dressed up, overly sexualized, and go and do entertainment shows or even read books for children at libraries? That would never fly. But now it's almost like this whole PC culture has gone too far, that we actually are putting these ideas and aspects on a pedestal and allowing it to our most vulnerable.
We are allowing our children to be so highly sexualized and in a depraved way as well. So not only are we, I'm sure many people know about the cuties in Netflix, where they have absolutely sexualized 11-year-old children showing breasts and twerking and humping the floor and engaging in sexualized positions. Not only that, but now of course it's going to the depravity sector. So the United Kingdom, they've had transgenderism or gender ideology in their schools for over 10 years, and they've experienced I believe it's about 4,500% increase in children as young as 4 years old now seeking gender therapies, and I think that's It's horrific, because we know that with quality counselling, about 96% of children actually do go back after they've had a dysphoria with their own body. Good quality counselling brings them back into line with their gender, because gender and sex are actually intimately connected. It's not a separation. There is no, oh, well, that's your sex, but actually your gender is something else totally completely. No, it's not actually. It's actually very, very immutably linked. Now, it's interesting because New Zealanders, they fund the puberty blockers and the hormone therapies, they fund the surgeries, they fund the splitting of the penis and the mastectomies and all of that. But what we don't fund, is good quality counselling to assist young people in terms of bringing them back into line and to help them have a decent, healthy life. We fund everything else. And so that's what, and I'm sorry, but both governments are actually pretty complicit in this, actually. Both main parties and every other party that's been in there, they're not kicking. New Zealand first, the arguably that supposedly is the conservative type of party, they're the ones who put Tracy Martin gunning it hard. I mean, she also went hard for the most brutal abortion bill.
So where do you think where are they getting their policies from? Because we're seeing it roll out around the world again.
We are. A lot of it does have to do with, I think it's UNESCO is the name of it. So yes, again, there is a bit of a UN link to this. And in the UN, what they want is sexual education curriculum, as well as their reproductive rights program, is they do want to see these discussions. In fact, one of their documents even states how to have a discussion with 4-year-old children about what it's like to masturbate in front of each other. I don't think that they mean to be pedophilic, but that's definitely what the outcome will be. It is definitely a pedophile-friendly area to be in. And even when you look at where gender ideology comes from, it comes from the two guys, John Money and Kingsley or whatever his name is. And both of them were quite depraved in their own personal lives. John Money, and he tried to force, or he tried to make it so that 2 boys would be living as 2 girls, and both of them killed themselves after a couple of decades or so. Kingsley even engaged in research of showing how many minutes it took for minors to ejaculate, as in children even down to 3, I think even 2 years old was one of them. Of course, we found out that it was actually a pedophile who's going around taking the money to do it. The very foundations of this are so utterly depraved that no parent should be listening to anything that any of these gender ideologists or theorists actually push forward. It should be, I'm sorry, contemptuously regarded and thrown into the deep end of a furnace. It is disgusting, and it is child abuse.
It's just so sad. And while we're talking about family, I just wanted to bring up, because there's another controversial aspect that I hear people criticise the New Conservatives for, and that's around the solo parenting.
Oh, and the Handmaid's Tale policy.
So can you tell us about that?
Okay, so what it is that we wrote on social welfare, and we said what we would like to do, and we put out an example of a policy that we think would be quite good. And so, in order to be able to gain this, if a mother wants to, it's actually quite strict. So, if you want to take a hold of our this particular solo mum's type of policy, then first off, you've got to be able to show that, yep, there's no dad, whether he's a coward, whether he's run away, whether he's died, or prison, or whatever. No support there. Second, got to be able to show that the family themselves have said, no, we're not going to support you. No support. So if you can do those two, if you can sort of say those two things, then if you'd like to take on this policy that we have, then you can go into it. And what it does, it looks like just basically it's a place or a facility, home, whatever, where you can go into these areas. It would be like Monte Cecilia in Māngere, where they've got different rooms and they've got someone who looks after the overall place. So they stay there, and then you've got a trained couple, and then they would help with soothing the baby, helping train to soothe the baby, to engage in mental resilience measures, even down to physical things like helping to find a job, basic budgeting, that sort of stuff. All up, it would be between 6 to 12 months. But the big one is that if you've got a mum who's got no support whatsoever, and she would like to take on this opportunity, and she does, then we can bring her in, and then they can engage in helping her to be a good mum, and also to make it sustainable, because you've got some aspects around already where it's only a few weeks, and then it just doesn't hold, it doesn't keep through. 6 to 12 months is a good amount of time. Also bonding without stressing out too much before you've got to go out into the world, so to speak. So we like it. Yeah, I'm not sure why people. I think I have heard a couple of reasons why people don't like it. One is it's optional, not mandatory. so we did hear that some people said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna march them off." So, bro, you don't want it. Say you don't want it. Ain't no one gonna tell you that if you want this, you've got to actually work for it. Or rather, you've got to have qualifiers to even be able to want it. That's what you want. The other one was that people didn't like. Some people didn't like the fact that it was a trained couple. To be honest, those people who say that they didn't like that one, they don't understand anything about the field. Because having a trained couple is very normal. Youth interventions, hostels, homeless areas. In terms of looking after other people, it's almost always a trained couple. That's normal. In the field, we don't. So I roll about that one. What's the other one? No stayovers. So people don't like no stayovers. Yeah, we absolutely unapologetic about that. We don't want anyone staying over. It could be a brother and they're beautiful and they love the mum as well. But just by statistics, that exponentiates the risk factor to mum and baby. Not only that, even if you've got a brother of the mum who just wants to be there for the family and just look after the kid, somebody they've come across somehow. Suddenly, what if you've got someone who's been a rape victim in one of the other mums or aspects like that? You've put her at risk. So it's just easy. Standard, no stayovers.
Blanket rule.
Rule. Don't care who you are, no stayovers.
There's no grey areas that way.
No grey areas. Yeah.
Oh, that all seems pretty uncontroversial to me.
I know it's.
Don't see what the problem is there. And the other one that I hear is that, you're just a Christian party.
I hear
for
that
the religious people.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot. I don't know how to. I mean, we're not. But I don't know how to sort of justify that one. We're not. If we were a Christian party, we would say we're a Christian party. No problem. I don't think I could be a part of a Christian party, I would say.
Because it would get too niche then, or?
No. Graham Keppel.
Elaborate.
Oh, sorry. I know most of your audience will go, So Graham Keppel was the dude of the last, I think a big Christian party. And he was actually mucking around with little kids.
Oh, right, okay.
Disgusting. So, I don't...
It just looks bad.
I am a Christian myself.
Yeah.
I fail every day. Well, if I was to put up what I would think, Christian, I would fail every day. So I would find it personally arrogant on myself, not anyone else, just my own way of thinking. I would find it arrogant if I label myself, I am Christian 2IC of the Christian party.
Yeah.
And it would be too hard for me to uphold because I know I fail every day. But the other one is for me, anyway, is Graham Keppel. So we're conservative, but also I guess it makes sense. We've got Christians, non-Christians. We've got a couple of Sikhs. We've got Hindus. We've got don't have any Muslims.
Right.
But I'd like a couple of Muslims. But atheists, agnostics. We've got whoever, whatever. It's fine. I think I know where that comes from though, because Western culture is the greatest culture on the face of this earth, as far as I'm concerned. It is the greatest in the history of mankind. And the reason why, I believe, is because it's a combination of Greek democracy and Judeo-Christian principles, very specifically, and they're combined in policy and law. So whenever it's a Western nation, most productive, most charitable, able to self-correct when something is found to be wrong and bad, and it also has parameters, because we know that we will all be strong and weak and big and mighty and poor and rich. We're all going to be all in our life. And so what that does is it protects the weak from the being preyed upon by the stronger. And it's one of the big elements that we have.
And I suppose that a lot of those socialist, communist policies that are trying to be brought in through different mechanisms are actually basically weakening those foundations of Western culture.
Well, so there's two reasons to why we are in the most important election in history of New Zealand since 1852. One reason is because we've had either democracy or Judeo-Christian principles being eroded at certain times, but never at the same time. This current age of the last maybe 4, 5, 6, but definitely within the last 3 years, has seen both pillars being eroded and removed out. Both. And the second one is that it's not actually a nationwide problem, it's actually a culture-wide problem. So US, Canada, England, Wales, all of those countries, most of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, it has gone across the entire Western culture as opposed to New Zealand only.
Wow, we've actually covered a lot of ground here. And do you know what? I just realised we haven't even talked about COVID
Oh,
the whole
true.
time.
Oh, man.
Which probably people don't really mind not having talked about that. But maybe would you like to quickly put forward how you would take forward our COVID response?
Yep. So our COVID responses, first off, lockdowns are insane. We cannot keep on hurting our own people. The way in which we get out of COVID is by the private sector, and it specifically is by agriculture, farmers, and the small businesses that we have. 96% New Zealand businesses are small and medium. Agriculture is our number one export. We can't get out of it yet. We keep on seeing governments, both main parties, just putting the kick into these things. It's just terrible. Zero carbon bill. First off, we would snip that. In fact, we would raise emission levels for a couple of seconds while we burn the ETS and burn the zero carbon bill. We would burn it. So that we would get rid of that. Our stimulus packages of the 20k tax free, that allows more movement and stimulus. The way in which we would offset that, of course, is to remove ourselves from a lot of the extraction of our money from New Zealand economy out there. Got a whole list of how we would offset it. So yeah, effectively, a lot of it's about economics, taking away a lot of the regulations, reforming the RMA, making it easier for businesses to do business, stopping this insanity of just having lockdown after lockdown. You can't eliminate. Okay, cool. Then let's live with. And that's what we would definitely say.
So you look towards Plan B and kind of what
Plan
those
B is
academics are saying?
Yes. So Dr. Thornley and Dr. Sunderland really like what they're saying. We haven't had a policy that we would go tightly in line with Plan B, but only because we haven't had that discussion. We would say, but we definitely agree with the trajectory, which says you can't minimise, you can't eliminate. So don't try to pretend to live in a unicorn world that's going to happen. That's more for the socialists who believe in.
Great. Well, is there anything else you would like to say, perhaps, to the staunch Labour supporters, or even maybe some staunch National supporters?
I used to be a Labour supporter, and that's before I found out that Labour brought in the dawn rates, and then I started digging, and actually they're hurting our people. I'll say, if I am saying to you, and if you're a Labour supporter, kudos to you. I used to be a Labour supporter as well. But the Labour that you know now is not the Labour that used to be. And I understand that Jacinda Ardern looks really cool and she says cool stuff, but from 20 years on the field, from being at risk youth myself, from looking at families and how to build them, Labour will destroy us. National will allow it to be destroyed and take a bit longer. And I don't want to diss them too much, but they don't do too much either. You can see that through the policies they've made: decriminalisation of prostitution, zero carbon bill, even the attempts to lower the age of sexual consent to 12 by Phil Goff. There are so many examples of where that's sort of gone through. But I would just ask that if you've got a problem, come and ask us, and we're happy to tell you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Elliot. I wish you guys all the best in the upcoming election.
Thank you.
And I hope to chat to you again soon.
Whakawelahi.
Thank you.